Okay, going to make some marinade here for a London broil. I've got pretty much my ingredients out here. Like to have it marinate for a couple of hours. Best to do it overnight, but today I only have a couple of hours. So we start with the good stuff. But here we are with a bottle of wine. Red wine for red meat. And there, it's open. Here we go. Now, to drink it, you'd want to let it breathe. But you can pour a little bit in here for your marinade. It doesn't take much. Got some Worcestershire sauce. Can't get my tongue around that one. And some soy sauce. A couple tablespoons of soy sauce. So a little bit of red wine, some Worcestershire sauce. Got some black pepper going on. I'd say about a teaspoon of black pepper if you're one to measure. Now, normally you'd put in some salt. I like Lawry's seasoned salt, so I'm gonna go with some of that. About a teaspoon if you're the measuring type of a person. About 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And about 2 tablespoons of honey. I got this from a local market. I use it for marinades and things like that and as a sweetener in baking, but I have to say it's a wildflower honey, and I'm not so much into the wildflower honeys. I know other people just love them, but it's not my preference for eating. You're going to mix it with some butter and put it on a roll or put it on your toast or put it with your peanut butter. I prefer a clover honey, or better yet, a fall run honey. But anyone who knows honey, here's some onion powder. I made this myself. Dehydrated some onions when they were dehydrated. I put them in the grinder, in my coffee grinder. Ground that up. Store a couple of jars of it. Now at this point you could stop and put your steak in, but I like to add a little bit of garlic. Not a whole lot because I am not a giant garlic fan. I like it to add some flavor, but I don't want it to overpower. So, let's see. Got my garlic here. Peel all the papers off, I like to call them. The skins. And it looks like I've got about, what? Yeah, close. Let's see. I've got a garlic press here. Oh, where did it go? There it is. Here it is. I knew I had one. Put that in there. And get some beautiful garlic out there. Toss that back in. Now, try your marinade. If it doesn't taste good now, it's not going to taste good on your steak. So don't hesitate to try your marinade when you're working it. So that's all mixed together. Very good. Got a little bit of a tang. Can taste a little bit of the wine. Now, I've got a very cheap cut of London broil, because you don't marinate a steak that is not a cheap cut. you enjoy that for what it is. Put this down in there. It's about 1.5 inches thick, maybe 2 inches. Now the honey, if I were to put this under a broiler or out on the grill, I would add a little tiny bit of brown sugar because the honey does add a nice sweetener to the meat, but the sugar makes it glaze, gives it that crunchy, crispy glaze on it when you put it under a hot fire. And my broiler, something's going on with it. It's not working. So I am going to put mine in a frying pan, and I will show you how to fry a London broil. Gonna let this marinate, put some potatoes on the boil and some water on. Be back.
2 hours later.
Okay, the steak is on marinating, so this is going to be a quick tutorial on the very, very basics for beginning cooks, mashed potatoes. I have thrown a little bit of the garlic that I used in my marinade into the potatoes, the water, and that's right here. Now, we're going to boil up and peel up. We're going to peel up some potatoes to boil to go with the meat. And for how many to do, you just look at it as how many people are you feeding, right? I throw mine in my dishwater. And I scrub them real fast. So that when I peel them, I'm not cutting any bacteria from the outside into the inside of the potato. Although it's being boiled and it probably wouldn't make a huge difference. Kind of pride myself on nobody ever gets sick from my kitchen. So, everything gets washed when it gets brought into the house. Doesn't go into the fridge or my cabinets until it's been washed. Then everything gets washed before I cook it. So, you know, we used to laugh at my great aunt who washed her cans. She brought in a can of soup or a can of pop. She washed it, soap and water, like she was washing dishes. Washed them, dried them, then put them away. It used to take her a week to put away a week's worth of groceries. And they sat in bags around her kitchen until she got to it all. And you know, now you hear about rats and mice and how their stuff gets on your pop cans, and then you go and you pop that top of that pop can. There is no such thing as a 24-hour flu. So, if you've had it, no you didn't. You ate something dirty and your body reacted to it. And it worked really hard to get that out of your system. So, that's why it's best to just let those things run their course, because it's your body getting it out. You go and take medicine to keep it all in, so you're not vomiting. And guess what? You keep all those toxins and bacteria in. So the faster you want the potatoes to get done, the smaller you cut them. I'm adding them to my little pan of water here. Put the heat on that. I'll put a little bit of salt in the water. With potatoes, potatoes just absorb the salt. It's just crazy how that works. If you've ever put too much salt in soup or a roast, or you've ruined a meal with too much salt, you just throw a potato in there and then fish the potato out after a little while. It'll take most of the salt with it. I have saved more than one meal that way because I'm not a big fan of high amounts of salt. And when I was young and learning to cook, I did not account for the salt in the beef bouillon or something like that that I used, and would wind up with too much salt in a dish. And I found out that little trick that, did you ever notice you can't get too much salt on a potato very often? It's really hard to do. We'll let those boil, and when they're tender, we'll mash them. Okay, this is a loaf of bread that I made. I kind of did it like a take and bake. I didn't cook it all the way through. Pulled it out of the oven a little bit early so that when I come along on a day like today, and I'm having a nice steak dinner with come along and I'm having a nice steak dinner, and I want some hot bread to go with it. I can hot bread it like this. Now, can't cook in aluminum. If you're not up on that stuff, aluminum is a leading cause of many forms of dementia. So, if you're going to use it, line it, parchment paper, wax paper, doesn't matter. But, here we go. Now I'm doing the whole loaf. Normally I just do a few slices for each person who's eating. But, I know that I will use this up for sandwiches tomorrow and the next day. So in the oven it goes. And there are my potatoes. Have a nice little boil going on. They don't. Okay, so we've got a couple tablespoons of lard going in the pan. Some onions. I've had the heat on. As you can see, it's nice and bubbly hot. So I'm taking that lovely steak that was marinated, getting a nice good coating of the marinade on there. And into the pan it goes. That's the noise you want to hear. Oh, this is where we want, what do they call it, smell-o-vision? Because it smells wonderful. Put those onions now. Couple tablespoons of butter. Just set it on top. Now, that iron skillet's hot. So you get yourself a spoon here. And as this comes up like a sunny side up egg, you just keep scooping that hot butter and the juices from the steak that have cooked with the onion. You just keep spreading it on top. Now the reason I let this marinade on the counter instead of in the refrigerator for a little while was you want it to get to room temperature before you throw it in the pan. Just like you throw a cold piece of meat into a hot pan or on a hot grill, and that meat is going to tighten up, and you don't want it to do that. So you're gathering all this up and marinating it over. Gotta let this now needs to rest for 10 minutes before cutting it. Turned off the heat. You cover it. Normally I would cover it with a plate, but I don't have one big enough. And I loaned out my pot with the big lid. So I am, as much as I hate to use foil for anything, I am going to have to use it to cover this and let it sit for 10 minutes. Okay, I've got the water on for the broccoli. I've got the potatoes going. I have opened up a jar of green beans that I canned this past summer. And when you're doing green beans, you gotta have onion. So, and you can't can them with the onion, at least it's not advised. Don't send me over. I'm not one to do the whole, oh my gosh, you can't do that in canning, because my beans are boiled back. And on some of those Facebook pages, you're ripped over the coals for that. Now, I have some mild dehydrated peppers, a little bit of jalapeno, a little bit of, they're all very, very mild though. I throw those in with the beans, or I throw in a little bit of cowboy candy, which is jellied jalapeno. So, broccoli from my garden. This was a head of broccoli that was bigger than my head, and it is so good. But what I have going on here is the water. I will bring the water to a boil, and then I will add the broccoli to it. And got that simmer going on, and now you just add the broccoli. Now this is not your store-bought tough broccoli that you can boil for a long time. This broccoli can only be steamed or boiled for 2-3 minutes, and you're done, because it was good broccoli, homegrown. Black-eyed peas. It's covered with foil. 10 minutes is up. I'm going to transfer it over here. Now, I'm cutting a piece of meat like this. You see the grains are going this way, and you want to cut across the grains. So, we're going to want to cut it this way, even though naturally you want to cut from a thinner end like this, right? But you don't. You want to cut across the grain. So we're going to be cutting this way and cut on an angle. So to plate this meal up, and I mentioned this was good for a marinade, but it needed to breathe before you had it with dinner. a little taste to go with dinner.